Okay, in this lesson, we're going to look at adding and subtracting fractions. And so in order to do so, they must have a common denominator. All right, so let's look at our first rule. So to find the sum or difference of the following, write your answer in its simplest form. So you can see right here I have a over b plus, or it could be a minus, plus or minus, c over b. So you have to have that common denominator, and if you do, you can go ahead and just add the numerator parts or subtract them. So if you look at number 1 right here, we have 2 over 9 plus 5 over 9. So we can go ahead and bridge that together as plus 2 plus 5 over 9, which will give us a total of 7 over 9. That one we can't simplify any further, so we just leave it. If we look at number 2, this time we're going to do subtraction, but the rule is going to be the same. So we'll go ahead and take the numerator 5 minus the numerator of 1, all divided by 6, or all over 6. And so then 5 take away 1 would reduce that down to a 4 over 6. And then this time we can see that we can reduce. They're both even. So we can just start by cutting them in half. So half of 4 would be a 2, and half of 6 would be 3. And it looks like I cannot simplify any further on that one. Okay, so when the denominators are the same, those are actually fairly simple, but when they're not, we have to do a little bit more manipulation in order to have common denominators, and that leads us to our next part here. So note that for any number n, if you multiply that value by a and also divide it by a, it's going to have the same value. So, for example, if we look at number 3 right here, I have 1 plus 3 over 7. And so I need that common denominator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that 1 and I'm going to multiply it by 7 and divide it by 7, which basically cancels each other out. We don't want to do that though, so that I can have that common denominator for my next step. So now when I multiply this, basically this will just turn into 7 over 7 plus 3 over 7, because we can all see that 7 divided by 7 would result back in that 1. Now we don't want to reduce that. We want to go ahead and take care of the addition here. So 7 plus 3 all over my common denominator of 7. And so that'll give me 10 over 7. Now, I like this answer, but you'll have to be careful. Sometimes in your homework, they'll ask you to put it as a mixed number. And so reviewing that, we'll take 7 and divide that into 10. It will divide once evenly, and we will have a remainder of 3. So that means that this is equivalent to 1 and 3/7. So just be aware of that on your homework. All right, looking at number 4, we have 6 minus 2/3, and so I need to have a denominator of 3. And so if I want to, sometimes I like to do this. I'll put the 6 over 1, just to kind of have them both as fractions. And I'm going to do the same thing I did on number 3. What I'm going to do is I need that denominator to be a 3, so I'm going to multiply the top by 3, and I'm going to multiply the bottom by 3. And so this will turn into an 18 over 3, and then I have my minus 2/3 right here. And so 18 divided by 3 is the same thing as 6. We're just manipulating it to where I have that common denominator. And now I can do 18 take away 2 all over 3. And then let's see, 18 take away 2 would give me 16 over 3. And then once again, I like this answer, but just to be careful, because sometimes we'll be asked to put this as a mixed number, and plus it's just good practice. Let's see, so 3 goes into 16, I think about 5 times, and so then that would leave us with a remainder of 1. So this could also be written as 5 and 1/3. Okay, so now these next few, we're not going to have that whole number. They're both going to be fractions from the beginning. And so we have to look at those denominators and figure out how are we going to manipulate this to where we have the same. And so if you look here, let's see, 2, if I were to just keep doubling it, let's see, if I were to go 2, 4, um, let's see, 6, 8, and so on, we can see that I can get to that 8 right there, and that's what I'm going to want to use for my common denominator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply that first fraction by 4 over 4. And so kind of like what I did on the previous two. And so when I do that, my numerator will become 4, my denominator will become 8, and so now I'll have that common denominator. And so what we can see is that 1/2 is equivalent to 4/8. And now we'll go ahead and add the numerators. Oops, got to put that out of order. Not that it would make a difference, but fix that. And then let's see, 4 plus 3 is 7, 7 over 8. There we are. Okay, if we look at 6, this one's going to be a little bit more challenging um, because if we look here, let's see, I have a 6 and I have a 4. So they're actually both going to have to be adjusted. And you might be able to figure it out, but if you're not sure, you take that number and then just keep adding that same number to it like I did here with the 2, 4, 6, 8. So let's see, 6, 12, 18, 24, and I could keep going, but that's probably going to be high enough. And then if I take the 4 and do the same thing, and then 4 plus 4 is 8, plus 4 is 12, plus 4 is 16, and so on. And so I can see right here, oh, they both have that 12 in common. So that means you can multiply each one by something in order to get to 12. And so that's what I'm going to have to do here. So looking at the first one, we're going to take 5 over 6, and we're going to multiply that by 2 over 2, which will then give me 10 over 12. And then on the other fraction, I'm going to go ahead, let's see, what would I have to multiply 4 by to get 12? Well, that would be a 3. So I'm going to multiply the top and bottom of that fraction by 3. And so that will turn into a 3 over 12. So once again, 5 over 6 is equivalent to 10 over 12, and 1/4 is equivalent to 3 over 12. But we needed to make that change so that now we can complete the subtraction. So now we're going to have, let's see, 10 take away 3 all over 12. 10 take away 3 is 7, 7 over 12. Okay, I have a few left for us to look at. So let's see, looking at number 7, let's see, actually I think we have the same denominators on that one, so I'm actually going to skip that one. So let's look at 8. So once again, if you really wanted to, you could do 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and so on. And same thing with the 7, 7, 14, 21. In this case, it looks like it's going to be the product of the two denominators, which is going to be 35. So my least common denominator in this case is going to be 35. So in order to get to 35, I'm going to have to multiply the first one by 7 over 7. And let's see, that will give me 21 over 35. And then for my second fraction, let's see, that one's going to have to be multiplied by 5 over 5, and that will give me 20 over 35. Now I have that common denominator. So then now, let's see, we're going to have 21 minus 20 all over 35. And then 21 minus 20 is 1 over 35. All right, I got 2 left for us to look at. So if we look at number 9, you might be thinking, let's see, is LCD 60? Well, if you use 60, it actually would work, but you'd have to reduce at the end. So that's why we call it the least common denominator. We kind of want to go for the smallest so we don't have to do that simplifying later on. So it's actually going to be 30 in this case. 30 is going to be the smallest number that we can manipulate this, where we're going to have that common denominator. So in order to get the 10 to be a 30, we're going to have to multiply by 3 over 3. Now we're looking at 21 over 30. And then looking at the 1 over 6, we're going to have to multiply that by 5 over 5. And then now that will give us 5 over 30. And we have that common denominator. So now we can do 21 take away 5 all over 30. So then let's see, what do we end up with? It looks like we end up with 16 over 30. Now this hasn't happened very often, but we do have something that can reduce. And so what kind of sticks out to me is they're both even, right? So that means that this is equivalent. 16 could be written as 2 times 8, and 30 could be written as 2 times 15, right? So we can just go ahead and cancel out those 2's. And then let's see, if we look at 8 and 15, I think 15 can only break into 3 and 5, and 8 can only break into 2 times 2 times 2, so I believe we're done. So for this one, we could reduce it to 8 over 15. Okay, looking at our last one here, let's see, we have a 6 and an 8. And so once again, if you're kind of unsure, if you were to multiply them together, you get 48, and it would work, but you'd have to be careful because there would need to be, you'd have to reduce at the end. So actually 24 should work for us. Okay, and just kind of review, I could do the 6, 12, 18, 24, so on. And then you could do the same thing with the 8, 8, 16, and then you could see, oh, okay, yes, 24, right? Okay, so on the first one, let's see, on the 5 over 6, we're going to multiply that one by 4 over 4, and that will get us to 20 over 24. And then on our second one, we're going to multiply this one by 3 over 3, which will get us to 15 over 24. Now we can go ahead and add the 20 and the 15 together all over 24. That will give us 35 over 24. Okay, I like that answer, but sometimes they're going to ask us to put it as a mixed number. So let's see, 24 will divide into 35 evenly once, and then we will have a remainder of, it looks like we're going to have a remainder of 11. So that means we could also write this as 1 and 11/24. Okay, so that is adding and subtracting fractions.